I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem. And though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me. He had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. 2 things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to, this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action, seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life, truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. My boyfriend started asking to join me in my girls' night in. Every time I tried to say no, he'd be like, I have to join or you'll have to cancel. It made me and the girls miserable having to sit there with him in the middle. This past Friday he insisted to join us again. I had enough. I came up with an idea to get him to hate hanging out with us. Made a plan and told the girls what we were going to do, and they were down for OT. The girls came and my boyfriend immediately sat with us and started ruining our conversations by steering them towards him / his work / his achievement. So here's what I did. I started bringing up gross / embarrassing subjects, and the girls were eating them up by talking about them in details. Subjects like sevks, periods, his most sensitive spot, cramp diarrhea, hairy legs, fart getting trapped in the vulva and coming out the front, squeezing shit out of our faces, cramp diarrhea, dirty underwear, and again, cramp diarrhea. We talked about this stuff in boring details, like, I could feel his discomfort without even looking at him. But God, when I turned to see why, he got quiet suddenly. He was getting red in the face, and had sweat all over his forehead. I bet he found himself unable to relate to thy's subject, thus couldn't take part in the conversation. He got up from the couch ready to head out. I looked at him and asked where he was going, and he was like, I just remembered that I have an important meeting with a guy in about 10 minutes and I have to go now. He rushed out telling us to have fun. The girls and I started laughing hysterically. He came home and berated me, saying I made him feel uncomfortable / sick with the horrible subjects I kept bringing. I said, what you talking about? This is the typical stuff girls talk about all the time, but he insisted I made him upset and caused him to leave. He declined to speak to me and been quiet since then. This is his apartment, he tells me who is and isn't allowed to come, and I thought this was fine since it's his place. Though I help with the bills, but he makes so much more as the head of security in his company, so that's that. I just can't believe how dense and blind I've been to his negative ways. He's still giving me the silent treatment, and I've decided it's just a lot to take. And so I'm temporarily moving in with one of the girls and will now be definitely reconsidering few things. I have this vegan coworker, we'll call her Vegan, who is very active on FB and in the office about being vegan and how cruel farming is and everything. Each to their own. I don't necessarily disagree with her views on animal cruelty, but here's the thing, I'm a hunter. Not a trophy hunter, but I do shoot feral pigs, rabbits, ducks, introduced, classified game ducks, and foxes and fish too. All except for the fish are classified as pests. Foxes especially kill native wildlife and farm animals, and farmers will often put you up on their property for free to hunt them. I have passed tests here, especially for identification of game ducks versus protected species, and practice ethical hunting. I.e. allow the animal to have a fair chase, no dogs or tracking devices. Practicing marksmanship and dispatching prey swiftly and humanely and not wasting the meat. None of that is obviously good enough for vegan. When she first came onto the team and told everyone she was vegan, I kept my mouth shut about my hunting. I also think she's really intolerant because she preaches to people about how going vegan will help with their various ailments, and always turns up her nose at people heating up meat in microwave. As a result, we've kind of consciously started excluding her when we get up for lunch. However, last year I started going hunting more regularly with a work friend from another department, whose uncle owns a farm where feral pigs and are an issue, and he often swings by to have a chat about guns and bows and our next trip. And she found out I was a hunter. This isn't even at our desks, it's in the kitchen area that has tables and stuff, and we sometimes eat our lunches together. Ever since then, every conversation I've had with her, she's referred to hunting and how cruel it is. One time, I wore a leather pencil skirt to work and she had a go at me for wearing animal products. She seems to have singled me because of the fact that I go hunting. My boss has no spine. I've tried talking to him about this. But she just intimidates him and makes it seem like she's been persecuted, and he's backed down from that. She even tried to get a vegan shelf in the fridge and tried to rope in some Hindu vegetarian guys to do that, but they pointed out that they use milk and cheese and honey in their cooking. They also think she's nuts. It's gotten to the point where we go out for drinks on a Friday night at 5 and we never ask her. I don't organize these things, a coworker does, but my boss told me, when I brought it up in one-on-one meeting, that she feels really left out and she seems to think it's my fault because I've been here for longer and I'm somehow poisoning them against her, or something. I have since been conscious of this. If anyone starts conversation about vegan, I just say I don't talk to her unless it's work-related and she's more than adequate at her job. It's actually become something of a joke or catchphrase. I told my boss I don't organize anything except official events, and she's always been invited. If she's not invited to informal stuff, that's not even organized by me, then that's not my problem. The coworker that doesn't invite her, she managed to piss him off because he's eaten guinea pig, he's from Peru. And she asked him if he'd eaten any of his other pets. For the record, he never ate a guinea pig that was a pet, it's something they eat in Peru. Whenever she brings up hunting or anything, I just point blank ask her there was anything work-related that she wanted to talk about, and if there wasn't, I would start talking to someone else or just walk off. I have asked her multiple times to keep conversations work-related. I never start a conversation with her at all. Most of the time, she pounces when I'm in the kitchen making tea, getting water, or just stretching my legs. One time last week, a group of us were talking and she got up to join the discussion. A horrible silence fell over the group to the point where I just excused myself and went to my desk, and so did a few others. It all came to a head in our team meeting today when our boss, usually at the ends, asks if there's any positive news or celebrations outside of work people want to share, like engagements, marathons, charity appeals, etc., and vegan sarcastically asked me how many lives I'd taken last weekend. I got annoyed and said her constant badgering me about my hobbies and choice to eat meat was discriminatory and bothersome, and that unless it was work-related, she was not to engage me in conversation otherwise, and told our scribe to put that in the meeting minutes. She seemed a bit shocked by that, and my boss looked uncomfortable but said fair enough. I thought that was the end of that, but the right before our boss went to close the meeting, 2 other coworkers also put their hands up and asked vegan to only engage them in work-related discussions, and that they were also uncomfortable being given non-medical health advice pertaining to their choice to consume meat and their diets. Again, boss looked uncomfortable but asked vegan to respect their wishes and closed the meeting. Vegan didn't look anyone in the eye after that but headed straight to the bathroom. My boss was trying to get one of the coworkers to see if she was okay, and I think one of them eventually checked up on her, but she was in a cubicle and asked to be left alone. She eventually came out and asked my boss to leave early, which she did. I feel awful now. She embarrassed me in front of my team with the lives taken comment, so I pushed back, but I am caught between not wanting her to miserable and not wanting anything to do with her at all. A few of my co-workers and I ended up in a proactive conference call after this with HR, who basically said that always been subjected to unwanted advice and jabs about eating meat was not okay. But some mediation was in order to cut the tension in the workplace. The HR rep then called my boss, who explained what happened in the team meeting and complaints that we'd made one-on-one etc. But then he went into a meeting room and didn't hear the rest of discussion. I don't know what to do, assuming she comes into work tomorrow, or if I should even talk to her at all. I have a daughter, Sadie, with my ex-husband John. We got divorced 5 years ago and I have primary custody while he sees her 2 weekends a month. Last year, he got married to Amanda, who has sole custody of her kids from a previous marriage. Amanda is a SOM, not for any health reasons or so on, she just doesn't want to work, while John works at a 9 to 5. He makes good money to support them, but not enough to live in luxury. I have a much higher paying job. Since it's just me and Sadie, I make sure she has the best possible life. She goes to a private school, set her up a college fund, and she has much better things than most kids: phone, clothes, etc. I still manage to raise her to be humble and not take things for granted, and she's one of the hardest working people I know. Always making sure to get good grades and keep her room tidy. Well, the last few times she came back after a weekend at John's, I noticed that the clothes she was bringing back in her duffel are A, not her size, and B, much cheaper and poorer quality than what I usually buy for her. I asked her why that is, and she told me that while she's at her dad's, Amanda takes away her nice clothes and gives them to her kids, while Sadie gets the clothes they buy from Target. I asked her if she wanted them back, but she said she didn't mind sharing since all her favorite clothes were kept here. The problem came when I went to pick her up last weekend. I had a business meeting and couldn't drive her over, so Amanda offered to just pick Sadie up from school, which hadn't happened before. When I got there on Sunday, John and Amanda asked me to sit down with them, and when Sadie came to hug me, Amanda sent her to her room quite harshly, saying her punishment wasn't over yet. I was confused because Sadie very rarely misbehaves. They sat me down in the kitchen and said that it was unfair for Sadie to be going to a private school while her kids go to a public one. So they decided that Sadie would be pulled out of private school and put in the same school as the girls. They also said I should keep up Sadie's punishment because when they told her, she blew up at them, told them it wasn't fair, and yelled that Amanda and her kids weren't even her real family, that all they did was steal. I told them in no uncertain terms to off. I would not be pulling my child out of a school she likes, away from her friends, because they can't afford it. I told them they could easily make as much money as me if Amanda started working in her field because she has the qualifications, and the job market is very good. I told them their money problems are not my issue, and if Sadie's items get stolen again or they try to pull her out of school, I'll be taking this to court. They've been blowing up my phone ever since, calling me a selfish. And after telling the story to a friend, he told me I was rubbing my success in their face. But I still don't feel like I did anything wrong. I got temporary guardianship while waiting for a court hearing. We're going to try to get full custody and have John get 1 day a week of visitation, supervised for at least the first few months, and no contact with Amanda or her kids. This way, he still sees Sadie just as much and they can try to repair their relationship, but she doesn't have to go back there. All contact between us is made through emails, which are CC'd by my lawyer, and I've asked for Sadie's things back. I've talked to Sadie and we've decided that she's going to try therapy for a little while to help deal with everything that's happened. We've had the hearing and our custody arrangements been modified. Any and all decisions relating to Sadie are made by me, and me alone. John has supervised visitation once a week. And Sadie will continue in therapy to deal with all the issues Amanda and company have caused her. They tried to push for 50/50 custody split on grounds of alienation. So me trying to put Sadie against her father. But we made it clear from the start that we wanted to keep Amanda and her children away, and wanted supervision only because we don't feel safe leaving him alone as of yet, but that we were open to modifications. Thanks to that, the proof of stealing, and Sadie's therapist's testimony, their claim was thrown out pretty quickly. Amanda's pissed, and has tried to contact me and Sadie, but I made it clear to her that if she keeps harassing me or my daughter, I'll have to make this known to the authorities. Sadie and I have blocked her everywhere, and any communication between John and us is made through text messages or emails only.